Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw what an SAP database contains. Okay, so here is the SAP database, and inside it, it has a thing called a client. You've heard of a client, right? Because we are logging into client 800. So there is a client number 000, which is the master client, and it's generally reserved for basis. Basis is the term for the technical team that manage the operation of the system. In here, there is 3 sections to the client. CL client. 3 sections to the client. Here we have the data area. And here we have the security area. And here we have the configuration area. So each client is self-contained in terms of everything it needs to run an entire business. So you don't need anything else in the database. The client, one client, runs the entire business. So in your production system, there will be only one client with data in it, set up with the configuration and security, and one client with all the data in it. Config. There is no connection between client 00 and 800. You cannot do any transfer of data. You can't see anything from one client to another. They're totally separate entities. Okay. In your system, you'll see lots of clients, which is usual for a development system, not for a production system. Okay. Production system, this is it. Okay. So client system. So there may be other clients, but they're for specific uses. This little area is cross-client. There are a few tables in the system where if you put data in their table here, it's visible across all clients. And you can even put data into it in production. The kind of clients, cross-client tables, are something like exchange rates. An exchange rate is an exchange rate, and it's happening on a daily basis, and it's not different across different clients, right? So if the dollar-euro exchange is this today, then that table should be available to all clients. So there are a few cross-client tables that are available to the business. There are more cross-client tables that are available to engineers to set up the system. Okay, so down here, so this is just space for additional clients. Down here is what we call the repository. I'll just put repo because writing with a mouse is hard. Repository. What's in the repository? Well, SAP takes with it all of its code. So the code doesn't live outside the database. All the code lives inside the database. And initially, the code is written in text. So like when we type a program into a programming language, it's written in text and saved. And then the programs are compiled for the operating system we're running on. So that's the compiled program. So this database, this SAP system can run on Unix or Windows, and it can run on different databases like SQL Server and Oracle databases. So when we write the text, we don't know which flavor of system we are. So it's up to the compiler to make it the right version. So the text is transportable across different platforms. So all of the code is inside the database. And that takes up, in a production system, it might take up to 32 gigabytes. Quite a lot of space. Then we have all of the tables with the data in it, and all of the tables with the configuration in it. And then to get access to it quicker, it may be reorganized in indexes. So tables and indexes are inside the database. Not surprising, because that's how we save it. Other things to do with the text and programs might be screens. Screens. So there's part of the programming. So there are other objects. There are HTTP pages. So you can log on to the SAP system from the internet and see all of the codes and things that we want to see from the internet. So the repository, like the word repository means, is the store of all objects to make the system work. The repository, by default, is cross-client, because if you log into 00, you can see these tables. If you log into 800, you can see these tables. However, it is filtered, so each one of these tables is indexed at the front with the client number. So if this table and the data in it has client 800 in it, then you can't see that data in 0. If this has 0 in it, then in 800, you can't see it. Okay. So what we're looking at in terms of security then is what's going on here. So here we have our users and our access control, which we call roles. So the users and the roles and the allocation of users to roles is what is the security context in here. As you'd expect, if the data is different from here to here, then would expect the security to be different here and here. And that's true. So a user here called Jeff and a user here called Jeff cannot see the same things, and they're not the same person. Okay. So every user and role is specific to the client and will only work in the client. Okay, well, we've got that. Everybody happy? So in our table, let's have a look, SU01. So this is user management. If I add that to my favorites, insert transaction, SU01. Here you can see that it's called user maintenance. You can put it in this shortcut code You can put it in your favorites, or you can actually find it in here. Here, you can see you can do create, change, display, delete, copy, lock, and password change. I'll explain it more in a minute. I normally create test objects called things like ZJF. See if there's one here already. Ah, there is one already. In here, you can see there's a lot of tabs, a lot of different parts of data, and these are data that are grouped according to their title. So this is the address page down here. I don't know anybody that really uses these functions. Log on data. This is the user type, which means I can get a user screen like this. I can generate a password. I can deactivate a password. I can belong to a group. And I can apply a security policy. And if I'm coming from the internet, I can use an alias. I can have secure network connections. This allows for encryption point to point. In the defaults, these are user specific. So this does not determine how the system stores data, only how you want to look at it. So if you're used to this, as we are in UK, I'm actually in Dublin. But in Europe, they have point, comma. You can choose to look at it in the way you are used to seeing it. And the system converts it for you. Likewise, if you're American, you can change it back to the other way around, the wrong way around. Here we can change the format of the clock and change our print device. So it's the printer next to us. Here we can change our time zone. So the system time zone is Central European time, but I like to see things in Greenwich Mean Time because that's my clock in Dublin. Okay. In parameters, I've got a partner company parameter, PGP, and it's a parameter value 1010. All this does is when a transaction or program asks for partner company, is that it puts this number in for me. It saves me typing. That's all this does. It's not a security feature. And I might have lots of different parameters that are pre-filled. If you imagine where I have a job, that's my Ring doorbell. Sorry about that. I'll just turn that noise off. That's my wife going to work. So these parameters will automatically fill. If you imagine I have 30 or 100 documents to do a day, and I have to put the same value in 100 times, I'll get repetitive strain injury. Okay, so this just saves people typing. The roles here. Oh no, I'm gonna have to think of another name for roles because I've done these before. ZJS. These are how we gain access to do work. But these roles are design objects. The profiles are the actual runtime objects. These are the keys that give you access. In groups, there's no user groups designed to me. Let's have a look if there's a user group here. Oh, look. There's lots of groups. So these groups are used to be able to organize your users and doing reports on your users. Okay, so if you've got 5,000 users and you want to know who's in finance, then you might want to say, right, show me the list of finance users. Actually, can you be in two groups? Let's try that. Put me in finance. So this says that I'm in France and I'm a finance user. So in the search tool, I can then search for people in France or finance. These are just labels. Again, they don't have any security function. In terms of personalization, if I'm using some other apps like ESS, MSS, that is to enter timesheets, then it will pre-fill some timesheet data. And the licensing data says how much we want to spend on this user. A professional user costs 3,500 euros per year. A development user costs 2,500 euros per year. A warehouse user, possibly 1,500 euros per year. So if you've got 1,000 users, this is going to cost a lot of money to run this SAP system every year, right? So the SAP is not cheap. To put in SAP can cost between 2 and 10 million. Okay, so this is a major investment. So this is something that is not put in lightly. So if you've got an SAP system, you've already got a very big and successful business. The other thing I'll show you is roles. It's quick, this system, isn't it? Okay, role, no, PFCG. I'll show you all this in detail. I'm just giving you an overview. So if I put in my ZGF role, I go and change it. The roles have 3 tabs, mainly. They have a description where you can keep track of what's happening. Oh, look, September 23 project. I was here before. Here in the menu, I say what apps. So you can think of these as apps. What apps does this user get to work with? Okay. When I select these apps or transactions, over here, the authorizations are automatically gathered for you from another main table. When you're in this table, you can then change or restrict access. In this case, the ABAP workbench is restricted to display only and only for this type of object. Okay, so you can get access to this authorization object, but then we can say we can restrict. If we want to give full access, we put the star. So this means you can display this object in any package, any object name, and any authorization group. In controlling product costing, you can see we can display. There's no value in costing variant yet, and there's no company code assigned. And the reason for that is that organizational fields here, the enterprise structure fields, are maintained outside the restrictions here. And here we can put the company codes separately. So I can put 1000 in here, division 10, 00 cross division, sales organization 1010, distribution channel 10. So this could be a valid set of figures. We don't know what this means yet, but we'll just save it. And then you'll see that things go a little greener. And I can even make it fully green by just pressing this. And then I can do save and generates a profile. Okay, great. So in finance, we have accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, controlling. What is controlling? Any idea?
General management of data for
management accounts. Yeah, management accounts. So these are the accounts that we send to the board. So the board is overall responsible for compliance. Of course, they don't actually do anything, but they're responsible for making sure that it gets done, right? So they have to make sure the policies are in place. So the board decides the policy. The policy is then given to the finance to implement. So the finance team then have to look at their areas and say, how do I apply this policy? The policy for accounts payable might mean that they have a separation of duties or segregation of duties, so that one person that creates the invoices in the system. So an invoice comes in, this person puts that invoice into SAP, and then another person that makes the payment can't be the same person. Okay. And there might be a third operation, which would be possibly an approval. So that might be a manager. So what we're doing here is actually looking at the workflow of tasks. The workflow of tasks is otherwise known as the business process. So this is the business process. There are other tasks like saying, where do the payments go in terms of the GL and all the management and configuration. But in this case, what we're trying to avoid is what? What are we trying to avoid by separating invoice, payments, and approvals? We're trying to avoid fraud. Yeah, people stealing money from the company. Yeah, or possibly making mistakes. So somebody pays an invoice twice. Okay, so the approval system will then say, oh, wait a minute, you've already paid that. So what we're trying to do is to avoid fraud and errors. Errors can be costly, and fraud can be costly. Okay, you could expect in your company that where people are paid well and looked after, the likelihood of fraud is low. In companies that have low pay and a frequent turnover of people, the likelihood of fraud is very high. So when we're looking at doing security, we have to understand, first of all, what our risks are. So do you know the SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Well, this is a threat. This is a risk. When we're looking at threats, it's the board's policy to look after those risks and threats. And the policies are what they put in place to lower the chance of threats. So every policy is put in place to lower risk. So that is our policy. That's the reason for the policy. The risk, when we're looking at the risk, if we want to lower the risk to zero, so if we want zero risk, the cost is going to be large. Okay. Zero risk means that we've got lots of different people with doing separate jobs. And we've got lots of approvals and lots of security and reports. So there might be reports down here, financial reports to check on fraud, or there might even be a fraud system added. So this might be a check, some kind of report and check to make sure that this is working. All of this costs time and money. Okay, so setting up the approval process is a cost. So that means we're consuming managers' time. Putting the roles in place here is a cost. The more secure we are, the more costly the process of security is. Okay, so there's a balance. At some point, we accept that the risk is not going to be zero. And it's up to the board and their policy to decide where that level is. So it might be that if you have two countries, say France and Ireland, and you have a full finance team in France of 3 people, but in Dublin there's only 1 person. Okay. And I get to do the whole inventory payment and approval process. This breaks your policy rules. Okay. But what you can say then is, well, what is the risk of Dublin doing fraud and errors? And it said, well, Dublin only does 1% of the business work, and 99% is done in France. So that means that Dublin only turns over maybe 100,000 euros. And you say, well, I don't care what this guy does. He's never going to break the system. Give him full access. So that is what we call a risk analysis. And here we give access, even though it's against the policy, and we know that there is a risk, because getting zero risk means putting 3 people in Dublin, and that's costly. So the business makes decisions all the time to say whether it's worth it to do full security. And if it is worth it, then we have to put all the policies in place. And if it's not worth it, then we put a value. So in this case, the business says, we do not care about a loss of 100,000. Okay. And that's their waterline. So that means that when we're looking to the security, we look at each risk to see what value it is if we make a loss. If it's less than 100,000, then we don't apply the security because it's not worth it. If it's more than 100,000, then we do apply. So there's this cost risk analysis. before we apply security. Do you understand the balance?
Yes.
Good. What should we do now? So when we're in finance, then you will be in. You'll be reading the policy. The policy will say the risk analysis does not have to be 0. The risk analysis is our tolerance value. So that's our tolerance. Tolerance value. So hard with the mouse to write. Our tolerance value is this. This is our policy. And we have to be compliant. That's the other thing, is compliance. With whatever role. Now, if you're not trading with America, you don't have to be SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, SOX compliance, right? Do we know Sarbanes-Oxley, SOX compliance?
SOX. No.
No, Jeff? Yes, Jeff?
Oh, no.
No. Oh dear. Okay. Let's have a look.
Celui de la pièce, je suis
Il faut ouvrir. Ah, c'est ouvert, ok.
France SOX.
Ça va, le directeur financier. C'est vexé.
There's normally a compliance level that is related to each country. French Supreme Court limits the scope of SOX. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act requires covered companies to implement procedures for confidential, anonymous submission by employees of blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I don't want to. That's the wrong thing. Let's try this. Audit board. So this, Japan has it, Canada has it. So Japan call it JSOX, Canada call it CSOX. All of these different people, everybody applies some kind of this. Back in the day, a whole load of companies were trading on the stock market in America, and they were putting up false statements of their accounts. And when they eventually collapsed, they nearly brought down all the banks and the whole infrastructure of America. So the compliance team, Sarbanes-Oxley, put in place laws to make sure that this wouldn't happen again. Oh, this is just selling stuff. Where's the description? So there's different parts of it. You have to be IT compliant. You have to be finance compliant. What is the European equivalent of SOX for internal controls? That's what we're looking for. So the EU equivalent of anti-fraud measures passed in 2002. So this is what your company has to be compliant with. The EU passed into commonly referred to as SOX, was designed to prevent fraudulent financial reporting. It makes it easier for executives to be held responsible. Before that, it was difficult to prosecute for wrongdoing. SOX specifically does not apply to companies operating outside of the United States. However, if you want to trade with the United States, you have to be SOX compliant. Legally, Like SOX, the rules set in place by the European limit non-audit services an auditor can provide. This reinforced the independence of auditors. So that means that if you've got an internal auditor, they can only do so much compliance sign-off. That means you have to have independent external auditors. Hold companies accountable for their financial reporting. The better transparency. So when you're doing your financial accounting, okay, the EU says that you are responsible for ensuring that your reports are 100% accurate. That means you can't claim that I didn't understand that the system was doing it wrong. Okay? There is no defense. This says you are responsible for making sure the numbers add up. It's all based on SOX. So SOX was the first compliance tool. It was designed by America, but you'll find that it's now implemented, not directly or 100%, but something like it is in every single country. Okay. So SOX is compliance. And that puts it back to the executives. So the board is the executives. So that means that that's you guys, you are the board, right? And some of you here, which are the finance team, responsible for making sure that compliance is applied according to what the executives require. Okay. And how much money we put into it, in ensuring that this compliance is in place, depends on the appetite for risk of the company. The appetite for risk for a bank is near zero. The appetite for risk for a pharmaceutical is near zero. Appetite for a furniture company is quite high, right? You can afford to lose a bit of money on here and there and have a little bit of fraud. Yeah, because if you have a bank and you lose confidence of a customer, then the entire bank crashes. If you have a customer in pharmaceutical who loses the trust because they die because of an issue with the chemicals, then they lose trust and the whole company dies, right? If you have a piece of furniture that goes wrong, then you replace the piece of furniture and everybody's happy. Okay, the risk isn't so bad. Can you see the difference? There's high risk companies and low risk companies. You're in the lower risk. Okay, so I'm not saying that you can go completely wild and be fully risky, right? You just don't have to be completely watertight like a bank has to be. Now, what else are we going to do here? New what? So, what we've got to do is do some kind of compliance risk analysis. So in the first case, then we want some kind of analysis to say what of our transactions that if we use them together is a bad idea, and who we're going to give this to. So if this is an accountant and this is an AP clerk, this is an AR clerk, and this is a manager, then we put our various tasks down here, which might be looking like transactions. So if I create accounts receivable, if I put VA01, this is an accounts receivable task transaction because they need to see purchase orders. So this is a purchase order create. Now VA01 is to create a purchase order. VA02 is to change, and VA03 is to display. Accounts receivable, so this is money coming in. They've got money coming in and they're putting money into the bank. If they're putting money into the bank, should they be creating purchase orders or just checking that the bank money coming in relates to this purchase order? So the purchase order create should be part of procurement. So what we might do is put that task into the procurement role, take this out of there, and we'll put VA03 into the accounts receivable, which is display.
Sorry, Jeff, just to be, when you say PO create VA01, what do you mean PO purchase order creates? It's we learned
Okay.
sales.
So in here, I want to go and do a VA01.
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, but anyway, it's going to take us to the sales order page. So what do you say purchase order then?
Hang on.
Yep.
I get mixed up between sales orders and purchase orders sometimes. Let me just get this right. GW, because I'm a VA01. Sales order. Oh, sales order. Yeah, I get sometimes mixed up. Let's move this across and make sales as well.
Yeah, I thought you meant a special field in sales order when you fill something, you know.
Yeah, I'll put sales in here. You're right. Yeah, sales. I have to work out what the purchase order one is now. So this is sales order. Create.
Let's see.
VA01. So what we're doing here is creating a matrix, basically. And what we're trying to do is avoid risk and separate what tasks properly work with each people. Yes. And what we're doing is then creating a list of tasks which separate different parts of the business processes. So you say that this is correct for this one. Should anybody else be able to create a sales order? Procurement, should they make a sales order? Managers, accounts receivable clerk, AP clerk, or accountant. Should accountant make a sales order? Doesn't make any sense, does it? The salesperson should be able to see it. The manager probably wants to be able to display. The accountant probably wants to display. And that's probably it. The sales might want to display their own. And what we're trying to do is to find out where there's a place where there shouldn't be access. Okay. So when we're actually creating access, we're doing it based upon this kind of risk analysis. So we need to know what the business process is, what the people are, and what their tasks are. Okay, so we need to know everything in terms of the tasks of what the business does. What's sales order then? What's purchase order? Purchase order. Create PO. Where's legislation? Where is it in? You'd think I'd remember this, wouldn't you? Sales, production, plant maintenance, product system, logistics. Google. SAP. Purchase. Close enough. ME21. So ME21N. Create a purchase order. So yeah, great. Thank you. Close. So here's our standard purchase order. So here we can purchase new desks, lorries, whatever we want to, paper, whatever you want the business to buy. This is where we buy it. So this is buying and the other's selling. So buying, so purchase order, create is ME21N and display is ME22N. So you'll find that we want the procurement team to do this. Yes, we do. And we want that. And we probably want the manager to do this. Accounts payable here and the accountant. Okay, so without going into massive amounts of transactions, what you'll do as part of a project is to identify all of the business processes and assign who is going to get which tasks. And then you come to this risk table and put all of the people and all of their tasks and to see whether there's any places where it shouldn't be. Where is the risk? So if you've got a risk of doing a purchase order, so I might say I want to order 10 desks. If I do goods receipt, I could goods receipt 10, or I could goods receipt 20 and then make a payment. And then I could make a payment to one to the supplier and one to myself. So I could get the payment for 10 into my own bank account. The system would allow that. Okay, but the procedures shouldn't allow that. We need to reduce the risk. And we do that by segregation of duty and making sure people can only do their tasks. So there is a thing called a role, and it has 3 sections to it. The first section is the tasks, and we put that into the task section. We call it the menu. So in here, we put our tasks. The tasks would be our transactions, web links, reports, whatever we want that person to do. So say we want to put in VA01, VA02, VA03 into these tasks. So we do that, and then when we create this role, when the user logs on, that's what they see. And so here, we've done the menu, we've added the tasks, and then we've got the authorizations. And then there were a number of authorization objects arrive. And then we had to put in the values. Values. So this is basically the restrictions. So we want to restrict people on what they can do. These auth objects, so these are the auth objects, come from a table. The auth objects has a table called SU24. It's actually a transaction where we could see the table. The table is actually USOBX_C and USOBT_C, two tables, but you can see it in SU24. In there, for each transaction, VA01, it lists all of the objects that need to be put into Profile Generator. So when you put in a task here, when you go to the Authorization tab, these values don't come by magic. They actually come via this table here. So we can think of these as being SAP defaults. So we get the SAP default values and objects from this table SU24. The restrictions then we put on to say what they can and can't do. And then we press this red button to do the generate. Okay, let's see if I can mouse fill this. It's close enough. So to generate, what does that actually generate? This actually generates a profile or lots of profiles. They have a limit of 254 objects per profile. If you put a lot of tasks, you might end up with a lot of objects, but it can only contain 254. So there might be one profile for a role. So this is a role. For each role, there might be more than one profile. It's only based on numbers. We don't really care as long as something happens. The profile is your actual set of keys. This is what gives you the access. So the profile is important. Yeah. The role is a design object.
Sorry, Jeff, I have a question.
Yeah.
A role can have many profiles. Can a profile have many roles?
Nope. The profile is totally dependent on the role. So it's one way. So in fact, the profile has the prefix of the role name.
Okay.
So we end up with a bunch of keys, and this is the runtime object. So this is what is actually compiled and used for your authorization checks. So down here is the user. So we haven't actually specified the user yet, but at this point we can. I will show you this now. But what I'll do is get you to create a user to use your role in a minute. And what we're going to do is then link these two things together. And what happens is this is the user master record here. So this is SU01, SU01, user maintenance, with all of those tabs. Boom, 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 boom. And one of those tabs is the role tab. And the one next to it is the profile tab. And we actually have to press this button twice. The first save puts the role object into the role tab. The second compares what's in the role to see whether the profile's there. And if the profile's not there, it goes and fetches it. So it's a two-step operation. So let me show you that. So if I go to the user, don't do this. Okay, so don't do this. Stop. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my user in, GWIGH, press enter. Currently, the tab is red. Then I have to do a user comparison. And it says you have to save the role first. I'll say yes. Now it says the user assignments for generated profiles is not current. So do the compare and bring in the profile. Okay, bring in the profile. Done. So now it's green. Okay. I'm going to start a new session here and show you what that's done.
So Jeff, what did you exactly do right now?
What I did was I pressed this button here, which is the compare. The compare tab brings in these things to the user record. Let me show you. Okay. So you can follow along with me and do this, okay? So go into a thing called PFCG.
Can you m'aider? Tu veux donner le travail, je vais fermer.
I'll put my transactions are down here, so you can follow.
Non, ça n'a pas donné.
We're going to create a role called GR number. So you use your own number, 01, 02, 03, 04. And I'm going to put underscore sales. So this, we're going to create a role called GR number underscore sales. And we're going to press this button, single row. Okay. So press the single button. In here, you can put a description. And you could say, I don't know, auth training. If you wanted to, down here, my first role, whatever, doesn't matter. And then you'd have to press the menu button to put things in the menu. It will ask you to save. You must save the role down, say yes. And then the menu comes up empty.
Jeff, so some people need to,
Can you please?
some people need to a little bit.
What do you want me to do? Do it again?
Miss the step, can you please?
Try again and go back.
Some people have missed the first couple of steps.
Okay. So in the transaction is PFCG.
Transaction PF.
On a déjà écrit, on est sur une
Ouais,
page, mais ça va pas.
Ouais, et bah après tu crées ton rôle.
Donc je single roll.
GR avec ton nom, ton numéro, underscore sales, et tu fais single roll.
Ah, c'est single roll.
Voilà. Après tu fais save.
Ouais, je fais single roll, yes. Après,
C'est
Tu fais une description, mais
dans le
c'est
single roll, je dois mettre fort. 0 francs ou bien 0, 0.
Not 0, 0, 0, 0 is my number.
ah, donc je dois créer pour
Le
moi.
numéro qu'on t'a donné. Toi, t'es 09, tu vois.
Je peux pas travailler parce que
Non, je mets juste 0,9. Tu mets juste 0,9 ou GR 0,9?
Sorry, just explaining.
Ah, moi j'ai mis.
Let me know when you're ready.
Ah, ça fait.
underscore.
C'est bon, c'est bon. Non, on est là. Martine, c'est bon, tu vas sur Martine.
Moi, je peux pas parce que si je travaille, je vais fermer.
Non, tu peux pas fermer. C'est par contre. Il faut juste aller dans Windows vidéo, mais ça va prendre 2 minutes et on a besoin de 7 minutes. Non, je le fais.
Ouais, voilà.
On a essayé, mais ça fait.
Ouais,
Sorry, Jeff, give us just a minute.
You didn't expect to work today, no?
Some of us
ferme d'abord le
understand
micro.
the steps.
Il est où ça?
Au bureau.
Oui.
Moi, si je fais comme il faudra, je devrais tout fermer. le machin.
Ah oui, mais
C'est ça que je fais.
non, moi j'étais justement.
Il est où ton plugin?
Il faut abaisser le truc.
Attends, il a bien fait.
Je connais pas ton truc.
Je sais pas.
Voilà.
Voilà.
Does anybody need help? You can share your screen if you want.
No, it's okay, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
all got to this point.
Sorry, it was just a...
And press single roll.
Ensuite, une fois que tu es comme ça.
And then you get this screen here.
Voilà.
Windows en bas.
Windows et là où tu veux le placer.
Vas-y, alors, vas-y, mets ton profil.
Put in some description and some long text and press save. When you're ready, say yes, Jeff.
À couper le micro.
GR, toi, t'es numéro 4.
GR 04.
Then press menu tab.
On fait quoi? Des single roll?
Oui.
Menu is empty. So now we need to put in the transactions. So plus for transaction. And here we're going to put in VA01, VA02, VA03.
Ah, ça va pas.
Oh, on n'a pas suivi transaction. Vous allez trouver. On attendait Mathilde, non? Il faut aller dans quoi avant d'avoir transaction?
I press this. I put in the transaction codes, and then I say assign transactions.
To save, yes, you mean.
And now we have these transactions. There are things we can do with moving them up and down. We can create a folder and put these things in the folder. We can delete, and we can switch off the technical name and switch it back on again with this so we can see the code. Okay, press save.
Ah, je suis perdu.
Okay. Next, we go to the authorization tabs. There's no profile, so there's no authorizations. So here it says, give me a name for a profile, please. This we don't change. We just leave it whatever it gives us. Okay. We don't want to see it. We don't care as long as it works. And then this button here, change authorization data. We're going to look at the authorizations that come. So I press it. It says, do you want to save the role first? Ah, yes. Oui. Another French word. These are some values that have to be put in. At this stage, we don't know what these are. So we'll just put full authorization and save. You see, you get stars because I said the star means everything. And then press save.
Excuse me, Jeff, how did you get the stars?
I just pressed the button full authorization.
Okay.
Can you go back again, please?
This one?
Just the numéro.
Before this? You want me to go before this?
Yeah, before this.
Before, yes, before this, because you don't have this page.
Before again, please.
So I was at the menu.
Okay.
And then I pressed the authorization button. Then I said, give me a name for a profile here with this icon.
Ah, ok. Donc, tu mets ce que tu veux. Hein.
Tu peux le faire suggérer aussi. Petit bouton à droite.
And then I went to change authorization data here, change. So pressed authorization, change.
Ça fait change, ça fait.
Yes.
When you first come into the role, it will ask you for organizational levels. And then you choose full
Désolé,
and
désolé.
save.
En bas à
On met
droite.
l'étoile.
Oh,
En bas à droite. Full authorization.
on ne remplit rien.
Ah, ok. On met pas l'étoile. Ah, ça met tout seul. Ça met tout seul.
Okay. After I save.
Okay.
Yeah.
Et après, on vérifie. Après, on sort.
Okay.
Save. Save.
If I open these folders, you'll see different objects have been put in here. These are called authorization objects. I can go to utilities, technical names on. And now you can see the actual names of the objects. S_T code, and there are the transaction codes that you can start. Down here, you've got sales and distribution. What kind of sales documents can you create? And what activities? You see the activities here. If I do change of activities, each of these activity numbers gives you access to do certain things. Change, display, lock, delete, archive, release, blah, 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 blah. And what we can do is take things away from people or give them access. In the sales document type, if I choose here, there's no document type. Sometimes you can get a list of document types like this, and you can say what kind of documents this person can create. Or if we're being completely lazy, we can give them full access, star. If we got full access, everything goes green. Okay. So at this point, just to cheat and make it look pretty, there's this cheating way. If I go to this yellow light at the top, it says there's missing values. If I press to the right-hand side, it says, do you want to put stars everywhere? I'll say, yes, please. Okay. And now everything goes green. Okay, this is not what we do in real life, but for training, it's fine. It means it will work. So I went to the traffic light system. I saw the yellow and I clicked the empty space to the right and it went green for me. What I'm going to do now is save my work to say I want to save these changes. And then based upon these values, I want you to generate me a set of keys, because this is a design object. So now say, create me a real set of keys, generate. And now at the bottom, it says profile created. Let me know when you've got to that, so that users can only see the tasks that they need to do. So user menu, SAP standard menu.
Okay.
And now, if everything's worked properly, you should be able to double click these and they should work. So if we click this, we should see sales order. Come back. Display sales order. Does that work?
Yes.
Yes, they all work because we did full authorization for those tasks. If you try and do ME21N, what happens?
Can't access it.
You are not authorized. And that's how authorizations work. You have access only if you're given access to the task and access to the objects. So everything else is not available. And if we want to give more items to the tester, then we can add them. And we can add. So authorizations in this system are additive. We can add and add and add.
And we can take them off if you want.
What you can't do is take away. You can only add.
Take away. So if somebody changes, I mean,
So to take away is to add less. So they are totally additive. So when you're designing it, you must design the restrictions correctly. So I'm going to go into PFCG. I'm going to update my role. So I need not a single row this time, but change pencil. And I'm going to the menu. And I'm going to add some transactions. And these are the ones I'm going to add. So you do the same. Okay, what should happen is you get these added to your menu.
Yes.
What I'm going to do is move these around.
Oui, tu vas dans use.
What I've done here, I haven't done a save yet. I've just added the transactions. So if I do save, authorizations goes red because we need to add the authorizations for the new actions. Okay. So I now click into the authorizations to see what I need to add. I go to change.
Il a dit qu'il faut enregistrer, ça va devenir rouge. C'est ça en fait.
Ouais, vous n'avez pas martigné là.
Il faut changer. Ah.
Tu mets full.
Here now we have some new things like warehouse number, profit center, shipping point, and plant.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to press full authorization again and save. Same as we did last time.
Yes, good.
Okay, we have some new objects for material management.
Yes.
But again, I'm just going to make this all green by pressing this circle next to the yellow.
Okay.
Give me all of the missing values, please. Press. It says, are you sure you want to give stars to everything? And I say, yes, please.
Yes.
Two more steps, save and generate. Save. And then regenerate the keys. Generate. Profile created. So here you can see that I've got new values. Okay, everything was updated. If I come back out, the user does not need to be updated. That is done automatically.
Okay.
So as long as we've got green lights here, everything is good. So we've updated the menu. We've updated the authorization. We've given full access, saved and generated it. So if I log on to back into this, now you don't need to do this. This is just for me. I'm going to create a new role called GRXX. Everyone. So this means that all groups, everyone, should have this role. Okay. So I'm going to create a new role. I'm going to put some things in the menu and say, look, general user actions. Initial project. Jeff Wright. 6 to 24. So normally I put in who did it, when I did it, and why. Because this can get updated every time somebody changes this name gets updated, but we don't know who initially did it. So I kind of keep a log of changes in here. I'm going to press save, and I'm going to put some general everybody actions in here. So the kind of things we need are SU53, SU56, SU3, LP, is it LP? SP, SPO2. So display your own spool requests, print requests, update your own user for settings, analyze what authorizations you have, There might be other things in here that we might want to assign later that everybody should be able to do. So there's our transactions. So if you're going to do printing, you need to be able to look at your spool requests and your settings. So go into authorizations. I'm going to create the access for that. They're yellow. I'm going to make them green. I'm going to save. And I'm going to generate. Okay. So that's that done. Okay. Now users, I need to assign this to everybody. But there's easier ways to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back out. And I'm going to do a mass action. So I'm going to do SU10. So this is a new one. Here is mass changes for users. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my users using address data. And I'm going to look for GR star users. Anybody beginning with GR. So I'll just execute that. Oh dear. There's a lot of them. So there is my one there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 sales.
Là, ça marche pas. Ah, c'est celui-là qui
6 test. Oh, I see what happened here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is transfer those users there. So I've got 1 to 9 here. And these are the ones that I want to do a mass update on. So I'm going to change everybody's user. And it says, what do you want to change? And I want to change the roles. And I want to add the role grxx underscore everyone. Enter. And I'm going to say, this is the thing I want you to update, to change. So change all of the users. I want you to add the everybody role. Okay. So magically, all your users are going to get this access. But it's not magic really, is it? So I'll press enter and save. So all of the users have been changed and the role has been added to everybody. Okay. So this is how we can do mass changes. We can mass lock people, mass change passwords, mass update roles, mass remove roles, all sorts of mass options we can do with this tool. It's all done for you. Or you go into roles, you'll see that you have the everybody role. And if you look at the profiles, you have the profile as well.